there's one thing that no one can take from you. That's your knowledge. That's your education. Your job right now as a kid is to get educated. That's your job. That's your full-time job. So diversity speaks to the richness of human difference, encompasses socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, language, nationality, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, geography, disability, age, and individual aspects such as personality, learning styles, and life experiences. Then we're going to talk about inclusion, a core element for successfully achieving and sustaining diversity. It refers to active, intentional, and ongoing engagement with diversity and is achieved through creating an institutional culture that fosters belonging, respect, and value for all.
Diversity and perspective-taking of difference is positive, then the climate, the culture should be organized around maximizing that experience, not minimizing it or denying it. In fact, it is the experience of being a college student, of being a faculty member.
And we know that if we have diversity and inclusion, or the newer term diversity inclusion, that's going to promote inclusive excellence. And you can't have inclusive excellence if we don't have diversity and inclusion.
Frequently, the recognition that differences exist doesn't imply that the student should engage in them. You frequently hear the recognition that there are a whole variety of differences, the recognition that diversity exists. But whether we engage in it or not seems to me to be another question.
So in the dominant culture, it's typically assumed that those in the dominant culture, they're worthy of the education. There's a presumption of competence for the dominant culture. That doesn't necessarily translate to those who are non-dominant cultures. And if we are responsible for teaching and learning, and even if it's subconscious, that some are immediately looked at as worthy and competent and some are not, we're going to have a problem in how we educate for the future. And when we look at how we educate, when we look at how we evaluate, when we look at how we determine educational outcomes, it's very important to consider the context, the environments under which the activities taking place.
We cannot expect in our students what we do not model in our organizational cultures.
We are all responsible for inclusive excellence, that relates to excellence in teaching and learning. And I'm not just talking about the faculty and the administrators, I'm also talking about the learners. I think it's a two-way street, and we all share that responsibility to make sure that we provide the kind of inclusive environment so that everyone can be successful and not only survive, but thrive. We cannot afford to leave any untapped talent on the table.
How do we help our students take the final issue of intellectual development in many of the models, and that is to learn to realize that part of their intellectual responsibility is in the intellectual choices they make. And that those intellectual choices are not just to please the professor or to please the requirements of the course, but are in fact themselves identity statements. The modern American campus, for all our difficulties with certain kinds of diversity and population and those kinds of things. So we're the place. We're the new global economy, not just the American economy. We're the new global economy, where first-generation students come, where people of different races and religions and ethnicities come, where international students come, where immigrant students come, where undocumented students should be able to come. We are the new place. We are the space where these kinds of encounters with diversity can happen, and where we and our students can learn to resolve conflict, unscripted problems, intractable difficulties in a peaceful and appropriate way.